Awesome. It is 1 o'clock Mountain Standard Time. I'm located in Utah. I know a lot of you are joining us from around the country, kind of looking into the chat. Looks like we have people on the East Coast, West Coast, some overseas. That's awesome. So let's go ahead and begin. Today, we are excited to present to you some amazing friends, customers of GUIDEcx, and just amazing assets to the company that they're part of. Lezette Markham from Groupize, she's managing director, and Justin Peticolas. I'm gonna, first we're gonna go through a bit of an agenda, talk about company intros, transparency, partnering for success, costs of inaction, measurement. These are all things that, topics that are gonna help you better serve the modern day customer. And we'll talk about more about what the modern day customer represents as we go through these agenda items. But first and foremost, just love to give the opportunity for each of us to introduce ourselves, starting with Lezette.
Yeah, hi everyone. My name is Lezette Markham. And although I do like that title, managing director, I'm actually the marketing director for Groupize. That title's cool too, though. And Groupize is the solution of choice for total meetings management. And I'm excited to be here. Also joining me from Groupize is Justin.
Awesome. And then it says,
Good
Lezette,
afternoon.
you're a global voyager. What does that mean?
I am. What was that? I'm a global voyager and what?
What does that mean?
Oh, that means that I travel extensively and I bring my 2 children and my husband along with me. We have a new dog, so now I'm venturing into figuring out how to add him to the voyages.
That's awesome. That's awesome. All right, sorry to interrupt. Go ahead, Justin.
Oh, so hey, good afternoon, everybody. I'm Justin Peticolas. I oversee the implementation, onboarding, and support teams at Groupize. I've been with the Groupize for 2.5 years, but I have over 15 years experience in meetings, events, and travel technology, and even more experience than that in various client services and customer success roles in lots of different areas. Also, I'm a customer of GUIDEcx. As Peter mentioned, Groupize uses that, and I was one of the folks that brought GUIDEcx on board. So excited to be talking about a little bit in my world and also working with GUIDEcx.
Yeah, thank you, Justin. That 15 years of experience has shown through in all the feedback and enhancement requests you've made. And I know we've implemented a lot of them. I know there's probably some you still want, but thank you for being a customer of GUIDEcx. We appreciate you.
Mm-hmm.
And then I'm reading your last point, a complete beach bum living on an island.
Yeah.
Really, who struggles when he has to wear shorts. I was when he has to wear long pants. I was going to say you have to point your camera down and prove it, but we won't do that.
No, you have to trust me on that one. So yeah, it's I'm in bare feet all the time.
Yeah. Well, full disclosure, I'm in shorts. It's 100+ degrees here in Utah. We're having a bit of a heat wave. So my rule, if it's over 100, you can wear shorts. All right, well, hey, let's get started. First, I'll introduce myself. So I'm a dad of 4 girls. I'm the founder and CEO of GUIDEcx. They say, the best companies are built by the founder's greatest frustrations. And my biggest frustration in my last organization was not being able to keep the customer on the same page. I'm a firm believer that the best companies in the world do things so customers don't have to call them to get basic information. And we'll talk more about that dynamic in the subsequent slides. I'm one of 5 boys. Our dad was a home builder. My mom was a school teacher. And we're all following in his footsteps. Yeah, I got 4 weddings to pay for. So wish me luck. I'm in the early stages. My oldest is now 11. My youngest is 4. So I love being a girl dad. So now that we have introductions out of the way, I just quickly reviewing about GUIDEcx, and then we'll talk about what Groupize does to give everyone some context as to how we'll be discussing the topics of this webinar. So GUIDEcx bridges the gap after the sales process and before the account lifecycle. All right, we handle this handoff experience and help companies provide a transparent, customer-facing portal that unrelated parties can work together. I love this slide because everyone buys a product or a service with dreams and aspirations, and sometimes, not all the time, you get, sold the Four Seasons experience and you're delivered the Motel 6 experience. And there's this trough of disillusionment. And with the tool like GUIDEcx, we help customers meet the demands of the modern day consumer. Customers today expect to be updated at every step during the way. You take Amazon, for example. If your package is late, you're notified that it's going to be late. And that's why you don't call up Amazon or call up Jeff Bezos and blow them up. So if you kind of think of where we fit or how we fit, we fit when implementations are highly dependent on external users, when customers have to do things in order to be successful with your product or a service. We also fit when the project durations are more than 2 weeks. That doesn't mean that we can't handle projects underneath a week, but when they're more than 2 weeks, lots of times there's more than just a welcome call. There's status check-ins, there's assets that are collected throughout that process. We also excel when stakeholders need visibility. This happens a lot with multi-location rollouts when you're dealing with maybe a corporate team that needs visibility into what kind of all the different locations or implementations are what the status of those are. We give quick insights into time to value, where you can accelerate your process, where you can where there's room for improvement. And there's also a white labeled functionality, portal that can have your brand. We put your name up in lights, and also when resources need to be managed and time tracked. So that's how we strategically fit in the tech stack. If we can help, we'd love to help. We have a strong incentive. We'll be communicating after this call via email and also on the last slide here. So stay tuned for that. How about Groupize?
Yeah, absolutely. Let's start on the next slide because it's all colorful and pretty. All right, so Groupize brings together travel, spend, and compliance for what we call total meetings management. We have customers in a variety of industries, and we've gained success with those customers by listening to their needs. And their need has been a platform that manages all of their meetings and events, both small and large, the entire life cycle from start to finish of those meetings and events, all in one platform. So we've created that solution, and we've been successful with just a few of those brands that you see on the screen now. And the way that we've been able to do that is by focusing in on that next slide, which is both small and large meetings. Now, the majority of what people think of when they hear meetings, especially within a large organization, are the complex meetings. These meetings are usually large and highly visible, and they usually are maintained by a robust marketing department or professional meeting planners. Now, what people don't see is below the waterline. It's what travel managers and people within procurement, stakeholders, and leadership within their departments get to manage haphazardly before bringing Groupize on board. And those are internal meetings which look different for different organizations. It could be meetings for recruiting, training, projects, of course, internal meetings and sales, and even extended stays. Those meetings are usually managed by those that aren't professional planners. We call them occasional planners. So folks like coordinators and hiring managers, project planners, and even executive admins. What's below the waterline, the part of the iceberg of meetings and events that you don't see, makes up 60 to 80% of meetings. And so getting eyes and being able to manage that level of spend and that duty of care is where Groupize comes in hand.
That's awesome. Phenomenal. So now that you have that context of kind of how, the context at which how we're going to be answering our customers through the experience and the lens of what our companies do, let's start this webinar off with a poll question. And this is interactive. So big shout out to Danny, who's helping us with this webinar on the GUIDEcx marketing team. She'll be launching a poll with this question: what mechanisms do you prefer when learning about new B2B technology? Pre-recorded demos, interactive walkthroughs, free trials, sales-led demos. Looks like answers are filtering in. Thank you. While those are filtering in, I just wanted to call out something. I think it's really cool listening to Lezette talk about the value prop that Groupize has as it correlates to GUIDEcx's value prop. Both of our tools represent this concept of aligning team members towards a common goal. I definitely know there's a lot that goes into to planning an event. I think Danny knows that better on our team than I do. But yeah, okay. So let's look at this. So pre-recorded demos looks like that is tied with interactive walkthroughs when learning about new B2B functionality, with free trials coming up, and then sales-led demos last. So it looks like those top two are number one tied. So thank you. That's awesome. All right. So first topic we'd like to talk about with, and follow up to that theme of transparency, and how it aligns teams together. Here's a question I have for the Groupize team. How has a more transparent experience created additional efficiencies while implementing Groupize? I'm going to get those names mixed up a lot here. Sorry.
That's okay. They're both G's.
Both G's. Got it. In my experience, in working with Groupize and onboarding for the last 2.5 years, I see that most customers, they're unsure of what it takes to launch or go live with a solution like Groupize. So they don't know what they don't know, or they're have a sour taste in their mouth from previous implementations and onboardings, either with other technologies or software that we're replacing. So they're going into it not knowing, and they kind of have that preconceived notion that things might not be going so well. So by laying it all out in the beginning in a project plan that they have access to, they can better understand that big picture. So there's no question really on what's coming down the line, who's going to be owning certain things, what needs to be done in order to achieve the end goal. I know that I've had, even most recently with the last implementation, shortly after kickoff, I see people going into my project plan, going into GUIDEcx, and they're already adding notes into the various tasks, reassigning owners. So, because of that transparency, they see what needs to be done, and they're already beginning to think of, okay, how are we going to accomplish it? So, really, the more visibility and transparency you give people, the team can work efficiently, jobs can get done on the background or even advance of due dates of when you would need it. And it ultimately is going to make things much more successful.
Yeah, those are excellent points. It makes me think of how, we're all consumers first in our own lives, and we deal with all the different brands that we buy products and services from. I think we shared the Amazon example. There's Domino's Pizza. They have that famous Domino's Pizza tracker. There's Delta. They notify me when my bags are boarded onto the plane. I think there's this theme of companies that kind of treat transparency as a goal within their onboarding or implementation cycle. Mm-hmm. They know that they're not only just satisfying the demands of the modern day consumer, because that's what they're used to in their consumers' lives, but they're eliminating the questions that and the phone calls and the emails. Do you see that, Justin, as like because you have such a transparent process? Do you feel like your customers are answering their own questions at sometimes? Are they taking less resources from your team?
Well, I think they know when to ask the questions at the right time, because, if you're giving people just an Excel spreadsheet as a project plan or giving them a list of things, it's not put in a logical order, right? So they don't know, okay, is this particular item of providing us the branding guidelines, do we need that now? Or can that wait another 3 weeks into the project because we're not dealing with it then? So because it's laid out in a playbook in milestone fashion, right? They know, okay, we are going to get to branding guidelines. We are going to get to creating a communication campaign for rolling this out, but that's not coming until the 4th week of the project. So they automatically know, all right, this guy's got it covered. We'll talk about it when we need to. We don't need to bombard the project and, take us down rabbit holes right now.
Yeah, that's phenomenal. There's 3 things I find that are most commonly asked in the implementation experience. It's like, where are we at? Like, show me where I am in the whole process. I think that eliminates calls too. It's like when I remember my last job, the most frustrating call I'd get from a customer was, I don't even know when I'm going to get, to use your product. And I wouldn't be able to answer that eloquently enough. There was always like, well, there's all these dependencies. The second question I always I find that's popular is, who's responsible for what? Like, what do you need my team to do? What are you going to do if there's third parties involved? And so what I hear you saying is, if you show them a roadmap, kind of a plan that eloquently shows responsibilities, that also relieves a lot of anxiety. And the third one, it's interesting. We haven't talked about it yet. It's like, what did I purchase?
Yes.
That's interesting, because like, we have to acknowledge that when we're in the implementation process, that not everyone participated in the sales process. Did you have something to add there, Lezette?
I was definitely dittoing that. It's important to not just start with transparency with the implementation and the onboarding part. For Groupize, why we love GUIDEcx so much is because by the time they're at the point where it's time to implement, they're already used to transparency, because we start all of our business relationships off with discovery calls where we want to make sure that we align with their current tech stack. We want to make sure that we're a good fit and that we're going to bring value to them. And that requires transparency on Groupize's part for what features we have and what we're able to accomplish towards their goals. So knowing that we start with transparency in the business relationship, it's important that we continue that trend of transparency onto implementation, and having the system GUIDEcx has helped our customers follow that.
Awesome. Well, thank you for that plug. Appreciate that.
Right, just a little plug.
Let's move on to the next question, because I think, well, first of all, before we move on, there is a study that GUIDEcx recently did. We measured over 250,000 projects that have gone through GUIDEcx in anonymized fashion. We have this, you call it a B2B pizza tracker. This is a view into kind of what that project progress bar looks like that gets shared with customers, with external users of GUIDEcx. And we look internally to see how many times does this get accessed by external users that we term as customers of customers, so Groupize's customers in this cases. And the average GUIDEcx customer views this project tracker 2.7 times per week. And I think this backs up what Justin and Lezette are talking about is, if you give them a view, if you give them a login-less link into viewing kind of that high-level overview of what's happening in the project experience, and then you can decide to give them more or less visibility, they will look. Customers will and are conditioned to want to see progress, especially stakeholders, right? Knowing that, hey, we originally planned to launch this project on June 9th, and we're now tracking early to deliver it on May 18th, or we might be tracking late. Like that's important. So that kind of backs up what we're talking about. You talked about some of these pain points, Lezette, no visibility, no data, no controls. And these are what transparency solves for in most cases, right?
Correct. Yeah. So within Groupize, the transparency again starts before implementation, is critically important during implementation. And then our transparency ends up becoming just like one of our value systems, because our platform is based on transparency to solve these pain points, right? Having no visibility into your meetings that are happening within your company, leadership not having control over who's signing contracts and or making agreements with hotels and other vendors, just the manual processes of just not having technology. So all 10 of these, or all of them, are pain points that we see within our company, customers have brought to our attention. So yeah, visibility is something that's just critically important, I think. And like you said earlier on, we've learned from a consumer perspective to want that transparency, not just in our B2C lives, but also in our company lives, in our B2B world. We want that same transparency. So this list is just showing some of the reasons to have transparency, because then you can get these things under control, like unmanaged spend and not having duty of care because you don't know where all your people are at having meetings. So
That's
what
phenomenal. And in a remote world, I think that's that much more important, right? To be that much more open and transparent.
Yes.
That's cool. So this kind of dives into this also theme, like partnering for success. Like once we kind of create a transparent process where unrelated parties can start to be more productive than they otherwise would be, you know, working in separate environments. Talking about partnering for success, a question here I have is in the Groupize implementation, what personas do you deal with? Like what personas are involved in the implementation and onboarding processes that you have to plan for?
Yeah, so Peter, it's interesting with Groupize, because we're Saas Technology, software as a service, you know, it doesn't require loads of IT people in order to build or architect or anything like that. We like to say that, you know, you could launch Groupize in a day, and we have in fact done that. You know, it's not necessarily the norm, but it's possible. But, you know, that being said, when clients are coming to us, they're used to other technologies, either in the meetings and event space or, you know, outside of the meetings and events world, that do require a true team of individuals with IT, marketing, legal, and whatnot. So, you know, we get all of those personas in an implementation and onboarding project, but really the core team, and what I like to instill is, you know, the core team is from the business. We don't need to design Groupize. It's already designed. What we're doing is more of a consultative onboarding, right? Trying to align what the customer's needs are for their travel and meetings program with Groupize's best practices. And, you know, that's what our onboarding program is melding those two together and empowering and training people. So, you know, the key personas that are part of the core team is the business people. It might be the travel director, the meetings manager, the web builders, but we do see some of those other folks coming in from the IT team, from the digital team, from legal. And what's great about that is it kind of piggybacks on what we were just talking about as transparency, but I'll call it visibility, right? You can add people into a project plan, but do they have to be active participants? No. You know, I like to keep my core project team smaller and then only bring people in when they need to be brought into an individual task, or they just receive the updates that go out every week or something like that. So, you know, I find project is most successful when you have that core team that's going to move a needle, but people that need to stay informed. And that's why I like GUIDEcx, right? You know, they have that dashboard to look at. They have, you know, they can take a look at the plan. We can involve them as necessary. So at the end of the day, you know, visibility is helpful, and you know, that's what's going to move things along.
Yeah, I heard two things there, which is super insightful. One is when you talked about, hey, Groupize can be turned on in a day, or maybe you said a week. I think you said a day.
A day.
A day. Like I think that is true for a lot of products, and so my mind went directly towards, is it an implementation, or is implementation synonymous with like this change management process? I
agree. I think that's what, you know, it's change management. It's implementing a process. It's not implementing a technology, right? It's implementing a change in behavior. It's implementing a new way of doing things that are going to save time, effort, energy, money, increase in experience. So that's what we're implementing with Groupize, and that's what the implementation project is. You know, a small percentage is the actual technical nuts and bolts. The majority of it is changing a process for the better, making and educating people. I spend more time on a project, educating and informing. That's really what it is.
Yeah, that's a phenomenal example. I think of our company in the tech stack that we use. One of the products we use is Slack, and I have a CFO that thinks that, hey, we don't need Slack. We can do everything through email.
No, don't let him do it.
But what was interesting about our usage is like Slack is an example of a product that you could turn on in one day, right? And people can start using it. But how it's used directly impacts the value it provides to your organization. And and we hired a few employees. This is years ago, but we hired a few employees from organizations that had used Slack really, really well. And we had to rely on them to teach us in our organization how Slack can be used efficiently and how, all the advantages it had over and above email, like, integrating it with all of our engineering, like the flags, the bells, the whistles, the notifications that need to go off when certain things happen in our product, when certain things happen in our CRM. Like now Slack is the brain of our organization. And we couldn't live without it. But to your point, Justin, like if we would have just turned it on, we would have turned in, the following year after the year contract was over. The change management is what made it sticky, right? The behaviors that, we were taught by, in this case, former users or other users of Slack at other organizations.
Yeah, this is where we put in the disclaimer, we are not sponsored by Slack. It's good tech, right? And tech is only as good as its adoption.
Yeah, people, process, and then technology, right? All three have to be in a line. Great points. The second thing I was going to bring up was the personas involved, like the intrinsic accountability. I think you were getting at of when you have different personas and motivations. How are you meeting their expectations and motivations? Like, I have to imagine in your implementation, you have individual contributors all the way to the check signer. You had mentioned that you might want to add someone to a project that doesn't really have anything like any deliverable, a direct action. Like, what's the reason for that?
Yeah, well, I think, especially, when dealing with larger clients, there's a lot of, a lot of cooks in the kitchen, right? And everyone just wants to get their voice heard, and they want to ensure they're getting, they're seeing the value from the very beginning, and, they're informed. I truly believe that at the end of the day, people want to be heard, and they want to hear what they need to hear so they could sleep at the end of the day. So I think that's also a good quality of a rock star implementation onboarding project manager, right? Is to draw out what all of the things people on a project need. Maybe you can combine them into a few groups and make sure throughout the project, people are getting what they need, right? Because if, the business owner, right, the check signer, if you want to put it that way, right? If they see the project is moving along and they're hearing oohs and ahs, they're happy they've advocated to write that check. Your IT team realizes, oh, all right, this is really a lot easy. I don't need to get my resources involved. They could just sit back and monitor. And if the business is starting to envision, okay, here's how we use it. Oh, we don't need to go through an advanced certification course to do this. I can go in and build a website after 1 hour call with Justin. They're seeing the value right there. So at the end of the day, all their motivations and desires are different, but it's key to make sure they're addressed, either directly or, passively by keeping them informed.
That's awesome. I think one of the things that when you talk about partnering for success, a lot of it is, and follow up to what you just said, is understanding who you're dealing with. Like you mentioned, check signer, person who's going to actually pay the bill, informing them that everything's going okay. Like that simple connection is really hard for a lot of organizations. I know I went through a process with a product we just bought for our SDR team, and they handed us off to a system integrator they dealt with, and then 6 weeks later I got an invoice, and I had no insight into whether or not this product went live, whether or not the team was actively using it, if we were in the middle or the start or the end of the implementation. And so my immediate reaction was, let's not pay that until I could find out. But with your process and enabled by GUIDEcx, it seems like you involved the check signers so
Absolutely.
that they are kept on the same page. They know that we're on track. And so when they get that invoice, they pay it. That's cool. When handing off a customer from sales to implementation, what are the best practices? Lezette, you kind of inferred earlier on that some of that post-sales experience is shared in the pre-sales process.
It is. Yes. So since I'm in marketing, right, and I've been in marketing and communications for 15 plus years, I always take the stance of listening to goals first. And Groupize does a great job of doing that. And it starts with those discovery calls. So by the time we get to sales, being handed off to implementation, we already have a great understanding of what the customer is trying to achieve. And then Justin does an amazing job at fleshing that out logistically, right? So that a plan can be put in place. So I'll actually let him speak on how we make heroes out of all of those stakeholders, so that the person who bought it, going back to personas, we have a deep understanding that there is a stark difference between the personas that purchase our technology versus the personas, the people that use our technology, right? And we want to make heroes out of everybody, right? Whether that means looking great to your department heads, or if it's to better get you on the path in your career to whatever you're trying to do. We want this technology to help you. So those are all things that we gather at the beginning. And I know that Justin does a great job at that handoff between sales and implementation.
Yeah, it's, to add on to that, because we are a customer first organization where, we're really focused on making that customer look good to, their stakeholders, like Lezette said, I truly love to incorporate warm transfers. I call it a warm transfer, right? I don't know if that's necessarily the term, but it's what I equate it to from a previous life. But, I see too many organizations rely on automations out of their CRM system to kind of move the customer along. Think of it as you're at a cafeteria buffet with your tray and you just go to station by station. It's very cold. You don't know what you're getting until it's plopped on your tray, right? So we always like to do warm transfers where our salespeople are part of an implementation kickoff call, right? They're just sitting in so that that client knows that they're taken care of. The client knows that, that we're all working together as a team. And then, fast forward to what it's going to happen after the implementation onboarding takes place, their customer success manager is named from day one. So we know going into it who their customer success and account manager is. They're brought into the kickoff call. So really, when a client comes into their initial implementation with those people that may not have been part of the sale, may not have seen demos, they're really seeing the Groupize family welcoming them into, using the product. So it's instilling that, customer first vision right from day one, and it's not cold, it's warm. And they know what they're getting. They know that, okay, Lindsay's going to be my person, come 6 weeks when we're ready to go live and we're moving forward. So, it's all about creating the fact that, we're here to support you, not just say, okay, we got to get you through A, B, C, D in 6 weeks.
Yeah, that's phenomenal. I think one thing to call out too, and what I heard in yours and Lizette's responses was the customer first theme is important, but the fact that you involve sales in the implementation process, like they are also building confidence in your organization to deliver the products and services that they're selling. And I have to imagine when they hear and sit on those calls, they now on their next sales call probably promote, how well their customers will be taken care of.
Oh yeah, I think, because you're right. The salespeople are dealing with different personas than client services people. So when there's that chance, even in a small meeting where worlds can come together, lots of people benefit.
Yeah, there's lots of synergies. Just to kind of close out on kind of this topic of partnering for success, just to back up what Justin and Lezette just said, in this same study of 250,000 projects that we managed through GUIDEcx, we saw a strong correlation of the more customer participants that were invited to projects, the higher likelihood you were to deliver your product or your project on time. So the kind of holy grail was 5 customer external users. Projects that had 5 customer users came in on time 91% of the time. And I think if you read into that, that's because of the intrinsic accountability that's created. When a contract signer or an owner or a stakeholder knows that something was asked of their team and their team either did or did not do that, if they simply just know that, then that magic happens, right? Accountability starts to work for you. The hardest thing about managing projects is managing people that you don't manage. And so creating that intrinsic accountability is important. And the way you create that isn't just assigning everyone to a Kanban board and expecting them to all understand what's happening. In GUIDEcx, and without technology, you can do this manually. It's just harder. But you can invite people to persona or personalized customer views. And so you might only want your stakeholder to get a stakeholder update or a project digest that tells them what was asked of their team, what their team, whether or not their team did that or didn't do it, and what's asked of their team the following week. Whereas you have maybe a customer project manager that needs controlled platform access and wants to see everything. So really important, and it backs up everything that was just said. The cost of inaction. So this is, we have about 10 minutes left, so we'll go through some of the, we have 2 more questions we'll ask. This one I'm really passionate about, and I want Lezette to give us her feedback on kind of what does inaction, where does inaction come into play? Like, first of all, what is inaction?
Yeah, so not to be literal, but inaction is when you don't take action, right? That's what inaction is. And so for me, outside of Groupize, I've been a lifelong techie, right? And so I know firsthand, like personal experience, the cost of inaction in regards to purchasing new technology, right? I am an early adopter, right? There isn't an AI program out there that I don't experiment with and pay my dollar to test it. But what ends up happening is that when you purchase technology and you don't act upon it, you don't have a goal in mind, you don't implement it, it can cost not only time, but it can also cost motivation. If a stakeholder has purchased technology and has promised new innovation for their team and it isn't onboarded and implemented properly, everyone can lose motivation. And so it hurts morale, right? So that's one cost of inaction is hurting morale. The other is just straight up cash, right? If you've purchased something, but it sits on the shelf and you don't use it, there's a cost involved with not implementing quickly and efficiently, and onboarding a new technology is simply, it's just costly. So that's really just like high level, my interpretation of inaction when it comes to technology.
Yeah, and that cost is incurred both on the customer side and on the Groupize side or on the GUIDEcx side.
Absolutely.
One example that comes to mind, kind of a real life example, my 3rd daughter was born, early, and she had to go to a level 2 NICU. Anyways, she spent there, she was okay, but there was about 3 weeks of worrying about whether or not, she was going to have a healthy, productive life. And I kind of thought about that process of when she was born, they gave her an AppGuard score. So for those of you that have had babies before, right, your babies are given a score on a scale of 1 to 10 on how healthy they look. And there's a variety of signals they measure about that baby to help define what that AppGuard score is. And as a parent, you always feel like if your baby got a 10, like you did something. But the fact of the matter is you didn't do anything. But my little Gwen came out with a 2. And that then advised the short-term care that she would have to help her become a 10 or to get to a healthy state. And ultimately, she had to be life flighted to another hospital. She had some problems with her lungs. Now she's a thriving 7-year-old girl. She's probably my most energetic and craziest girl that I have, which is a good thing. It's all about harnessing the energy. But long story short, I compare that to your customers, right? Lezette talks about the cost of inaction, that failure to launch. One of the ways you can mitigate that is, take the signals that are given to you in the onboarding stage and create an AppGuard score for your customers, right? Create an onboarding health score. And that health score should define whether or not you got to life flight that customer to another department to handhold them, or that they're highly engaged and there's a self-serve model for them to be subscribed to where they can thrive. But I promise you, if you just take all your customers and push them out to your general population of customers and not make an attempt to identify, hey, what the health was after that onboarding, that most important process during the customer experience, you're going to put yourself at risk. Let's talk about one other question. Before we talk about that, we once again, we're backing this up with kind of raw data that's taken from these 250,000 projects in GUIDEcx. And one of the things we see is when you forecast the end date and when you kind of manage this onboarding health process, and the major signal that we define as a healthy customer is when a customer comes in with the original time to value, like within the originally planned launch date. if they do all the things in order at the proper time, on time, that customer is much more likely to be renewed than if someone kind of buys a product and then delays and doesn't respond to emails, doesn't respond to calls. And it's just the obvious connection is you're going to have a harder time getting that customer to adopt your product and service. So we have this functionality in our product that kind of forecasts an end date, just like Amazon tells you when your package is going to be late before it's late. We have functionality that tells you when your project is trending to be late before you're actually late, so you know where you can fly faster, where you can help accelerate the process. Going into the last kind of section of measurement. This is a theme that's important, right? I always say you can't optimize what you can't measure. And so, the first, step of any process is identifying a way to measure. So how is Groupize optimized your implementation experience? How has it been iterative? Like, what important indicators have you measured in order to improve your process?
So, we're constantly taking a look at, how can we make each implementation onboarding project better, right? So, I take a look at what our playbooks are, what they are today versus what they were when we created them 2.5 years ago when I came on to reimagine our onboarding process. And, it's markedly different. A great example is, I thought, hey, we're going to onboard a client the way they would typically plan and execute a meeting, right? We'd start working on the administrative items, then we'd work on, configuring the meeting registration, then the budget, and then, sourcing your venue space and attendee registration. We'd structure the onboarding just like how someone would plan a meeting. That's, logic would tell you that. And then once we started working with our customers, we found out, they need to start using Groupize faster than that, or they came to us with immediate need because we have the reputation of being easy to use and launching quickly. So we realized that, we'd see in the projects, they'd want to go and say, okay, we could tackle all of the branding later on. We could tackle getting single sign-on later on, but what do we need to do in order to get Groupize usable today so that we can create a meeting? So we realized, well, let's not start out with the behind the scenes stuff. Let's start our projects out with getting, the front end that the end users are going to see, that the attendees are going to see, the travelers are going to see. Get that configured first. So if they have a need to begin using it, or they've identified pilot users that want to begin using Groupize, they don't have to wait 3, 4, 5 weeks. They could begin using it now. So, really taking a look at what our clients are interested in touching in Groupize first. That's how we've kind of sliced and diced our playbooks, sliced and diced our templates in GUIDEcx to be able to say, hey, let's move the attendee registration up first and then create that milestone there. So ultimately, it's listening to our clients. What do our clients need? What are their priorities? And shifting our implementation program to match that.
That's awesome. Yeah, there's a quote that comes to mind of like a custom process creates a customer for life. And what I hear you saying is you listen to your customers and help to help to your team to understand, hey, do they want an accelerated path? Do they want another path that fits their needs? All correlates to their wants and needs, and your teams are responsible for fulfilling their hopes and dreams, right? So that's awesome.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Groupize is easy enough to be able to configure in a very fluid way. So really, it's taking that time in the initial kickoff call and just, aligning and setting on the goals. What do you want to achieve? When do you want to achieve it? And then, that's where we can go back and reset that project plan very quickly and say, this is how we're going to accomplish it. So, ultimately, the client can log in to GUIDEcx the next day, and they can see exactly what they want to know based on that. And you're right, Peter, it feels like, this implementation fits like a glove for our organization because it's exactly what we want. And that makes, in my opinion, very successful because, they feel like it's theirs. They don't feel like they're just being, pick one from column A, 2 from column B, and 3 weeks later you have a product. It's their configuration.
Yeah, that's phenomenal. I could riff on this topic all day. I almost told everyone at the start of the webinar, we're going to take 3 hours to discuss this. Feel free to join us, but we're going to take the time. But unfortunately, that's not reality. We have we're just closing up, a couple more minutes. The only thing I'd add is, a connected experience is, provides that custom process. I think that's what you're describing. And one of the things I advise early customers of GUIDEcx to identify is, hey, what parties are involved in your experience? What external technology is involved? And then, thoughtfully outline the responsibilities so that your process can be enabled and connected together. Lots of generic project management tools will only manage one side of the equation, right? Your internal deliverables. And at my previous company, we fell into the trap of having everyone follow the same internal process, but we had 40 project managers following up with customers differently. Some sent spreadsheets, some sent emails, some made phone calls. And the result of that was we provided 40 different customer experiences because we didn't measure the external communication. And with a tool like GUIDEcx, you can. And you can even go one step above that. You can connect. In this particular example, I'll just call out one piece of this plan. This company that uses this plan has hardware that's shipped to a third party. And that third party uses Trello. They don't use GUIDEcx, but that's okay. With GUIDEcx's recipe builder, when this hardware gets shipped, it automatically places a task on Trello's board. And when they move that task over to hardware form filled out and hardware set up or what have you, whatever needs to be done, that auto completes a step in GUIDEcx and the next thing triggers. So this measurement aspect is as much about process automation as it is identifying what parties should be involved in the experience. With that being said, just key takeaways that you heard from the call, and you guys will all get a recording of this call. The importance of transparency. A transparent experience relieves the anxiety levels of those that you serve and increases the trust level. Partnering for success. Identifying the personas involved in your implementation and understanding what motivations exist within the personas that are involved. The cost of inaction, this failure to launch theme of, when customers don't adopt, that not only costs them money and heartache, it costs you money and heartache. And so being thoughtful about measuring the signals that can equate to an onboarding health score that can help you define that short-term and long-term subscription of what sort of playbook you're going to subscribe to them. And then last, but certainly not least, is you can't optimize what you can't measure. And so focus on measuring what works and what doesn't, and be iterative. If you're one of our implementers on our team says, if your process is written, in a stone, it will become your tombstone. Meaning that if your process doesn't change, you're gonna die. I almost didn't get that, but it came to me right in the moment. But with that being said, we'll take a few questions. I understand we're at time, and then we'll close up. Danny, did we have any questions that came in, or should we go ahead and move on?
Yes, one question was, I think maybe they joined late. How do you know when it's the right time for software like GUIDEcx or Groupize?
Yeah, I'll answer it from GUIDEcx's standpoint. I think when you have a process that involves external parties that need to be held accountable to key deliverables, GUIDEcx becomes a tool where those unrelated parties you're trying to engage can optimize and accelerate how they work together better. So I'll keep it short. Obviously, we can elaborate on that a lot more.
Yeah, I would say from Groupize perspective, and also just like a generic perspective of when do you get new technology, I see two paths. You get new technology when the pain has just gotten too bad and you know that you need a solution and manual processes are no longer working, they're no longer serving you, or you're at the point where you're looking to up level and streamline, right? So for us, our customers come to us because they want to manage their spend. They want duty of care for all of their meetings, and they want eyes on everything, and they want to be able to control that transparency while having ultimate transparency. So for our customers, we find that they're ready for new technology when it's one of two things: the pain has gotten too bad, or they're ready to optimize and streamline.
Awesome. In the interest of everybody's time and to be respectful of those that have meetings coming up in this next hour, we'll go ahead and close there. Thank you so much for those that have attended. Big thank you for Justin and Lezette for sharing your wisdom. If you could hear the round of applause, take a bow. I'm sure there's a loud round of applause from everyone sitting in their offices and even in their home offices. So thank you for joining, sharing all the things that you've learned in your career. To learn more about GUIDEcx or Groupize, we posted a link in the chat. You have there's an incentive also advertised specifically for GUIDEcx, 20% off your first year for those that submit a link via that Groupize webinar referral page that you see there. And there's some conditions that you can see there as well. With that being said, thank you so much. I appreciate your time. Have a fantastic day.
Thank you, everyone.